Fund Your Focus, how to easily navigate your Digital Manitoba Initiative application, and power up your digital projects. So some diligence here and some full transparency. We're going to start with a disclaimer. Auxesys Inc. and myself, I'm not associated with the Manitoba government, the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce, or the Digital Manitoba Initiative. So we don't represent them. The content of this webinar is simply the result of our own diligence, our own research. We've been doing a lot of work to go through this process with a good, fair number of people. We're in the process ourselves, and it is our domain. So if you look at, I guess, the intent of the Digital Manitoba Initiative and the types of projects that are eligible, it's basically kind of a laundry list of what Auxesys has been up to for the past few years. So we've got great interest in the program for many reasons, but more importantly, we're excited about the program. We think that this is just the spark that Manitoba needs, especially the small business community, to really get into some of those upgrades that have been kind of maybe just looming over us. The stuff that we want to do, that we know that we should do, that maybe is a little bit scary or risky. And this is just that nudge that I think so many of us are going to need to really get into this world. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's take a look at the agenda and let's go over the basics. So we're going to start with an introduction to the DMI. What's it all about? What's the spirit? Why does it exist? We'll talk about the pause. So if you're here and you're kind of not registered yet, basically I think that attendees are going to fall into one of two categories. Either you've registered and you've got access to your portal, or you haven't registered and you are looking at a website that says registration is paused. Just by curiosity, if you are in the webinar group and you are not yet registered and you're waiting on the pause, maybe sound off in the chat and I can just understand kind of what the split is a bit better. But we'll talk about the pause. There's also a number of other oddities. If you've read the documentation, you've looked at the website, there's probably just a few kind of question marks in your mind, some things that are maybe not quite clear. And while Auxesys, we don't have all of the answers, we've done a fair bit of diligence to try to understand these little strange items. And I've also had the luxury of speaking with the director of the program. So we should be able to fill in some blanks here. Next, determining your business's eligibility, which is simple, but there's some real easy pitfalls here. Next, determining the eligibility of your projects. Or how to select an eligible project. So we'll actually give some examples too of what some projects might look like. Finally, we'll round things out with a look at the process and the documents that are required. So we'll go through, I've got a flow chart that should help explain what this process looks like step by step. They kind of lay out the process on the website, but I'll try to do as clear of a job as I can of describing that process. And then finally, we'll discuss Auxesys' approach, and we'll obviously leave time for Q&A and some discussion. So any new joiners, if you feel like sounding off in the chat or the Q&A about where you are in this process, that would be much appreciated. If you've registered and you're waiting to press submit, or if you're still waiting to register and you're wondering what the pause is, just want to make sure that I tailor the content here to make sure that everybody here is getting value. Alrighty, diving in. The DMI. What is it and why does it exist? So I think everybody probably knows this. If you're here, 15 million in funding from the Manitoba government. The fund is managed by the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce. So it's this group that's responsible for adjudicating the applications, for managing the technology. It's actually a pretty cool system, the technology that runs the initiative and the processes. And so that's their responsibility here. It's 2 grants. PowerUp is 25K, TechUP is 5K. We'll talk about the difference between the two of them, but essentially they're very similar. The big difference between them is the adjudicators want to see a focus on adaptation for PowerUp. So they should be larger, more robust projects, and they should be focused on business adaptation, process adaptation, cultural adaptation, those sorts of things. Why does it exist? Well, I think it's pretty obvious, especially if you look at the design of the program. The purpose is economic stimulation. What actually happened was the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce, they continually surveyed their members asking, what do you need? What would make business better? What would make life better? And those members, by and large, continued to say that they wanted to do these digital projects, but it was difficult to get their feet wet. And so I think that's the purpose of the initiative. is to make it a lot easier to take that leap into some more robust digital projects. And I think that's articulated here. The goal is to help pull the trigger, try new things, and reduce the risk associated with those things. Because I'll be the first to admit it, a serious investment in the digital space, especially at the start, can be quite risky. There's a lot of potential pitfalls and blind spots and ways to go off track. It can be daunting, but this definitely helps. All right, let's get into the separate grants in a little bit more detail. PowerUP, $25,000. As I mentioned, it's focused on adaptation, adapting your business model, your operations. Projects, these should be completed within 90 days. We probably have a lot of questions about this. And as I get into the oddities section, I'll discuss this further. The PowerUP and the TechUP can both actually be used to recoup funds from digital projects, rolling back or starting as early as April 2021 and moving forwards. This probably raises a lot of questions. There's a lot of ways to, I think, get off course here. So I'm going to talk more about this in the oddities section. The summary, the quick version of it is, if you're going to choose to recoup for receipts and past expenses, there's a way to do it that will minimize or reduce your chances of success, and there's a way to do it that will maximize or improve your chances of success. Next, TechUp, focus on upgrades, upgrading your digital assets or tools. These projects are those that should be completed within 30 days. Again, there's probably some curiosity here. And again, they can be used to recoup. The idea, and I'll maybe use some examples here, TechUp, that 5K, if you're just beginning to familiarize yourself with the space, is probably just enough money for like a decent website upgrade or a new website, or getting yourself into the world of e-commerce, or having some digital payment portal online for your customers. This is like really getting your feet wet, whereas PowerUp can really actually be used to put some mustard behind a full process for, or a full project for a really great foundation for your online presence. So a number of elements of really cranking up your online presence. So that's I'll get more into the detailed differences between these two, but that's the summary. Okay, some big questions. Delivery of funds. Basically, the 15 million is going to be administered on a first come, first serve basis. I think it's obvious to the system and to those visiting the website that the goal is a quick dispersal of these funds. Because the goal is economic stimulation, you may have noticed, if you registered already, at the end of that registration form, they ask you to preemptively upload a void check. So they want to, once you're approved, get that money in your account 5 to 7 business days after. And we've actually been with a lot of people who have already received funds in the account. I don't know, maybe a few. I've heard anecdotal evidence through folks that we've already got funded. And that's actually only for TechUp that I've heard that that's the case so far. I'm still got my ear to the ground on PowerUp, the larger funds. Okay, the pause. All about the pause. This is probably the biggest question on everybody's mind, and the oddities. So if you are waiting to register, I'll go through this. No, the big question is, if you haven't registered yet and you're looking at that pause on the website every day, no, you're not too late. The reality of the situation, and so much of what I'm going to talk about today, is like going to be like tactile, real situations, because there may be some cool technology, but this is a fund administered by people at the end of the day. So there's a very small team. I think, in fact, the team managing the fund at the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce is a team of 2. At least last I was able to speak with the director, and they had a very large number of registrants in the first week. So the thing got announced, the program got open, and I think within less than a week, there were around 1,000 registrants. So very quickly, that team realized, oh my gosh, if we actually want to make this fair, if we want to make sure that we keep everything straight, we're going to put a pause on this right now, just to make sure that we can get through that first cohort. They say that they are going to be very clear about when communicating that pause is released. So when you're able to register again. Now, part of me is a bit curious about that, because if they're building and generating interest between now and the day that the pause comes, and then it unpauses, is there going to be a flood? Are they going to have a crash of the systems? We'll see. But I would something that Auxesys is doing is helping folks in our network stay tuned in to when that pause will be unpaused. All right. Yes, I pretty much talked about this. They still haven't officially announced. They say that they are going to be clear about it. But when I spoke with the director on the phone last week, at the end of the week, I think it was Thursday, she mentioned that it would probably be about 2 to 3 weeks until the pause was lifted. Okay, this is probably another big question on everybody's minds. There's probably a lot of people who aren't registered who are wondering, should I even bother putting together my documents, doing a bunch of preparation? What should I do here? Is there going to be any money left because it's first come, first serve? My question for the director was, let's imagine there was 1,000 registrants. If all 1,000 registrants were approved, would there be any money left? And her response was a little bit. But some people will be declined. There will be some people who aren't able to receive the funds. So my guess is that if this first 1,000 or so folks get through the initial process, that first cohort, we're probably going to be looking at somewhere between 5 to 15% of that $15 million left. So what does that mean? That means that if you haven't registered yet and you're waiting for that pause to unpause, we've really got to be on it. Okay. So I basically summarized that here. So if you're not registered, you want to monitor the web page, do your work to ensure your eligibility. We need to make sure that we're in good standing with the Manitoba's Companies Office. If you're in default and you owe on your annual filing, you'll need to rectify that. I would also, if you're really adamant on maximizing your chances of success, do your work. And I'll show this in the process flowchart. Make sure you prepare your case brief, prepare your quotes, prepare your scope of work and whatever other documents that you need, so that when you are actually able to upload them and go through that next stage in the process, you're not stuck at the back of the line, you're getting in as quickly as you can. And then preparing a digital void check. So making sure that you're ready to go once you fill out that registration. You will be asked to upload a void check and answer a number of questions, and you'll be able to get an idea of what those questions might look like. You've probably seen on the website by it asks you to do a quiz to check your eligibility. So they do ask you, do you have a Google My Business profile? Do you use email marketing? Do you have a CRM? Do you have a CMS? They ask you a number of these questions, and to have quick and ready answers and the void check will make that initial registration process much more streamlined. Okay, so for the rest of you that are registered, we're past this point. We're going to talk about the scenarios. There's a number of scenarios if you're registered. So scenario one, you're in the portal, you've uploaded all your documents, but you can't hit submit. This is a bit strange. No need for alarm. The DMI, they're going to alert us when that submit function is activated. It's not activated yet. As far as we can get in the process is submitting those documents, and then we sit and wait for the DMI to notify us, and then we basically just click that submit button. So never fear, there's nothing broken. This is right now on purpose. You'll be notified when you can submit. Excuse me, just need a sip of my bubbly here. And feel free to chime in with any questions at any time. Okay, registered. We're registered. Scenario two. I've also just got to keep making sure I don't have any emergencies at the old office here. So apologies if I'm checking on some stuff here. Okay, registered. Scenario two. We're in the portal. So you've registered, you've gotten access, you set up your account, but it's unclear exactly which documents we need. And I'll admit, it's a bit fuzzy. So never fear. If you don't have a robust project already scoped out, Auxesys is here to help in whatever capacity. There is barely any room in the fillable case brief PDF. So maybe you've downloaded that case brief PDF and you've noticed, especially on section 4, like I'm supposed to put a scope of work here. My recommendation, which I'll get to in a little bit more detail later in the presentation, is to build yourself some appendices and have another document, because you want to have a decent scope of work and project plan laid out. What about recoupment? I'm going to talk again about recoupment a little bit more, but basically the summary of the recoupment question is we want to make sure that anything that we're trying to recoup for is in the spirit of the Digital Manitoba Initiative. So remember the why. It's for economic stimulation, and the words that were used on the phone with the director of the program was step changes. So if you're trying to recoup for a bunch of receipts and expenses that are just kind of business as usual around your shop, you're probably reducing the likelihood that you'll succeed. Whereas if you, let's say starting back in April, started to invest in new email marketing software, a new CRM, a new CMS, new effort in digital ad space, new network hardware, new computers that are like a game changer for your organization, those are the things that you'll have more luck with in the recoupment department. And then finally, it's unclear exactly which documents we need. What do we need? They use different wording across the website, across the application, across the portal and the documents. Do we need a quote, a detailed proposal, a scope of work? It's a bit unclear. My thought is that it's less about exactly, because they aren't exact about it. It's less about having a quote, a detailed proposal, or a scope of work. It's more about making sure that everything you put together from a practical perspective is going to maximize your chances for success. So a lot of our clients that we've been helping with this, we've basically put together a quote that is a mini proposal, and we've done a really good job of making things super clear in the case brief. And we're confident that that is going to be what is needed for the success. I would say if you're doing something that's a little bit more esoteric, maybe something that might be a little bit out of the norm, maybe you're putting together, new neural network system for analyzing ad traffic and engagement, you might want to put together something that, is a bit of a more detailed proposal. So the team, remember, it's going to be a human that reads that proposal or that quote, can a little bit better understand exactly what you're doing. If it's unclear as to whether or not those funds are actually being used in the spirit of the DMI, you might be out of luck. So, if you're doing something way out there, a detailed proposal might be where you want to go. And then a scope of work. This is really interesting and really weird. If you're struggling with this, I'd actually recommend just reaching out to me in person, because it's going to be on a very case-by-case basis. But the way that the case brief is assembled and the way that service providers typically put together a scope of work is very different. So most of the time when in my business, when we put together a proposal, a scope of work, or a quote, we do it by deliverables. We do it by scope items. And then it's the business objectives or the results that kind of follow after that. In the business case brief, what it does is it asks you to list the business objectives and then associate the scope elements with them, which can kind of pull your brain in knots a little bit, and it can be a bit tough to unravel. So if you need assistance with working your way through this, feel free to reach out. Okay, lesser known oddities. They do a decent job of communicating this one, but I think it's worth driving home. So the question might be, what about internal wages, salary, and consumables? The first is, are they eligible uses of the grant? The answer is no, and they state that clearly in the case brief. So let's say, for example, you lay out a project and you're going to spend $25,000 on website upgrades and CRM and CMS and ads and all the rest of it. And you know that it's going to take your team, 100 person hours to do it. Well, that's, a $5,000-8,000 investment. Can we use that $25,000 to pay those wages? The answer is no. This kind of skips ahead, I think, a little bit to number 3, which is, what is the spirit of the initiative? Is in the spirit of economic stimulation. They want to see that there's additional economic activity generated from the grant. So the reason they've decided that wages are not eligible is if a business puts together the case brief and they say they're not going to spend any money internally because they're not getting any money to put towards it internally, that may contribute to a less than favorable evaluation of your application, right? They want to see that you're not necessarily matching, but also bringing your own investment and activity to the table when launching these projects. And so maybe I should have reordered these, but the third question should be, there's that section, and I can pull up the case brief in a bit if we want to get into this specifically, but they ask several sections. What is your internal investment on wages and consumables? What should we put here? My recommendation is to put something that makes it look reasonable and like a serious economic investment. Most of the clients that we're working with at Auxesys are small businesses, micro professional services firms, small manufacturers, small retail outfits. And most of the time, I think about 100 man hours, 100 person hours over the course of the project is around reasonable, or maybe 50 to 100. So something, if you do your own math and you know what your own, wages, salaries, and consumables are, maybe you think about executive and you think about what it takes to keep the lights on and the overhead and the supply. I've been talking about the $5,000 to $10,000 range for how much you that should be put in that field. So point being, if they look at that and they say, oh, this business is going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 internally, and they're going to spend $25,000 externally doing all this work, hey, that's a pretty good use of the fund in search of economic stimulation. Again, if you've got more questions about that, feel free to reach out. Okay. Oh, and this is exactly the note right from the case brief. So internal costs are considered the firm's investment in the project and are not eligible for repayment through the Digital Manitoba Initiative. So just word of warning, make sure you don't get hung up on this one. It would be a really easy way to get hung up. Okay, let's read between the lines for each of the grants. So first, that 90 days. This is a big question. If we're familiar with the digital marketing or the IT space and software in particular, we know that most software subscriptions, licenses, hosting, networking licenses, these are done on a monthly basis. And what the grant language says is that these projects, they need to be complete in 90 days. It was tough to get a specific and exact answer out of the director of the program when I spoke with her last week, but they essentially nodded. They are from the industry. They have a history of experience in the IT industry. They basically nodded and said they understand that. And if you're clear about it in your application, it should be adjudicated favorably. And that means being within the spirit. So I would make the argument, and I made this argument on the phone, to which I basically got a nod, a positive bit of reinforcement. My argument was, well, the 90-day project is getting the licenses in place, spinning up the software, configuring it, making sure that it's stable, onboarding your users to make sure they're familiar with it, etc. And then it rolls out over the course of a year. So it's just the reality of the nature. It's like, what are you going to get out of software in 3 months of a software subscription? And then that's it. That doesn't really get you very far. Your time to value on software to begin with is usually going to be 60 to 90 days. So we just got to be aware of this and make sure that we assemble our application accordingly. Okay, recoup. What can we recoup? How can we maximize the chances of success? I think I mentioned it. We want to make sure that it's in the spirit, that it's a step change. The example that was given to me by the director was that if a certain large telecom provider in Manitoba applies and say they want 25 of the laptops that they normally use around the shop, it's like, no, that's business as usual for you. Or if you want a bunch of, new printers that are the sort that you've been using, or new printer cartridges, again, not really in the spirit. They want to see you doing new things that you might have been otherwise a little bit fearful to do in this area. Okay, next, how much funding should we request? This is a really interesting question, and I don't think there's really any clear answer to it. All I can tell you is how I would be thinking in this situation. If I were an adjudicator, basically the question is, A, should I apply for TechUP or should I apply for PowerUp? And then B, I think it's obvious, if you're going to apply for TechUP, you could probably max out that 5K rather easily. But if I apply for PowerUp, maybe I can only want to do $15,000 or $20,000 worth of work on a project. Like maybe I don't think I'm $25,000. I don't even have enough ideas to spend $25,000 on. My thought is, if I'm an adjudicator and I know that the spirit of the fund is economic stimulation and to get the ball rolling in, it's kind of, I think, like budgets. If I'm a manager and I give you a $50,000 budget for the year and you only spend $30,000, I'm probably going to argue that your budget should be $30,000 next year. I think my soft advice in this realm is, if it's a $25,000 grant, you should probably A, apply for at least $25,000. And because the grant and the funding is in the spirit of economic stimulation, I must imagine that they're going to be a bit more favorable for those projects that are $50,000, $100,000, and that $25,000 is just helping that group pull the trigger a little bit more easily. In fact, when I spoke with the director, that was exactly the example that she gave. I mentioned to her, I said, wow, this is so awesome. So many of the projects that I scope out with our current clientele are exactly in this range, that $20,000 to $30,000 range. To me, it's like the perfect amount of money to really solidify your online presence or really solidify your IT and your networking. And she smiled and she said, yes, yes, exactly, exactly. And the very next thing that she said was, or that $150,000 project that everybody hummed and hawed over for 8 months, where all of a sudden an extra $25,000 makes it a no-brainer. So, if we're a small business and we're humming and hawing over, $5K, $10K, and a $25,000 project, put yourselves in the shoes of that person who's going to see 100,000, 200,000 projects and think to yourself. So myself and some of the clients that I've been working with, our funding requests have been about $25,000. The projects that we've been scoping out have been like 25 to 30K range. The company internal investment has been like 6 to 8K range. So on paper, it all adds up. It's not just that you were doing the bare minimum. It's like, here's some real value-added economic stimulation. Okay, TechUP, 30 days. I'll just defer to what I said on the last slide. Same thing. I think that, for $5,000, if you are planning on spending this on software subscription, hosting, networking, controlling licenses, it really seems very highly favorable that you'll be able to spend the money on like a year software subscription, as long as it's kind of taken care of and implemented in 30 days. Just got to be clear about it. Next, same thing with the recoup. I'm going to go over this in another slide a little bit more clearly with a chart. We want to make sure that if we are recouping, that it's in the spirit and it's a step change. And then how much documentation do we need? There's much less documentation required for TechUP. You don't need to submit the case brief. And it's, like I said, a lot easier to go through the full gamut of that process. If you're curious to learn a little bit more about TechUP, or if you have questions that I'm not able to answer, let me know through email and I'll try and do my best to help you answer those questions with whatever we have at our disposal. But as far as I'm aware, I even heard a little bit between the lines, the hope was to have the system of awarding funds, especially for TechUP, be a bit automated. So I know that some people have already been awarded the funds. They've already got funds in the bank account. So definitely a lot easier in terms of the process. The disclaimer and full transparency at Auxesys, our shop, is well tailored towards TechUP projects, but really, where we shine is in that PowerUp area. Those projects that have a few more moving parts, a little bit more complicated, are really amalgamated around a strategy and adaptation, business adaptation. That's where we shine. So, full disclosure, I'm going to have a bit more insight on the PowerUp side of things. Okay, business eligibility. How do we know if we're eligible? There's really only 3 things that you need to have. A lot of us might be thinking that we need a federal business number. No, we need to make sure that we have a Manitoba business number. That means we need to make sure that we're registered with the company's office. If you are a founder of a startup or a solopreneur or somebody who runs a small shop, you may have skipped this step. So you want to make sure that you do your registration. It is something that you can get through reasonably quickly, or if you've got legal support that can help you get through this reasonably quickly. But the second element is that if you're registered with the Manitoba company's office, you have an annual filing that you owe. And I'll be fully transparent. I was just going through my filing. I was like 3 days late replying to my lawyer's email, and I didn't quite read it properly. And then lo and behold, I registered and I got an email saying, Auxesys, we apologize, but you have not been successful in your registration because you're not in good standing with the Manitoba Companies Office. And so thank goodness they had the proper systems in place to continue to monitor, and the filing went through the next day. And then I spoke with somebody on the phone and they said, oh, no, you've now been approved. You're good. I wouldn't rely on that, though. I was a little bit taken aback that it just happened for me automatically. I would definitely do the diligence if I could go through the process again to make sure. Go to, I'll include some information in the email if anybody's curious, but make sure Google Manitoba Companies Office, go to that portal, log in. You can search for your business name. It'll give you a Manitoba business number, and you can see a little table there that will show either you're in good standing or you're in default. It's a little bit confusing because I can't remember what the name at the top of the table said. It says like current status or something, and then it says default. Don't confuse default for saying like, oh, I have the default status of like, we have the same status as everybody else. No, default means you're not in good standing. You need to clear up a balance owing. Okay, finally, the last thing you need, a bank account for the business. You'll be asked to provide that check, and everything has to be, associated properly, proper structure. Okay, Moving onwards, project eligibility. How do we know if our project is even eligible? I honestly think that with everything I've said so far, you probably have the tools at your disposal to understand this. It's got to be in the spirit. It's got to be focused on digital upgrades. It has to be in pursuit of a step change. If you're pursuing PowerUp, it needs to kind of be organized, a strategy that is focused on adaptation, on big change. But let's dive into the details a little bit here. So simple stuff. DMI, they want to see that step change, something that's radically new or reasonably radically new. Next, TechUp, eligible stuff is software, hardware, and service, either of the IT or digital marketing variety. And then PowerUp is also, it might be tough if you read the website to understand, well, is there a difference in stuff that's eligible for PowerUp? And I think really what the website is saying to us is that all of the same things that are eligible for TechUp are eligible for PowerUp. They just need to be organized around a strategy of digital adaptation a bit better. So adapting your processes, your business model, or your culture. I think the first two are easy to understand. It's like, hey, maybe I never sold stuff online and now I'm going to sell stuff online. Maybe I never used booking automation and now I'm going to use booking automation for adapting processes. In the cultural side of things, it might be like, we've never used project management software before to manage our task, our delegation, and kind of how we interface together. And maybe now we're going to use project management software to adapt the culture. Okay, moving forwards. Here is that chart I mentioned. It's a very complicated chart, but I think this chart illustrates the spirit of DMI. The goal is a step change. So not if your chart just looks like it stops here in terms of your digital exploration, that you just want to make marked, measured, slow improvement in the world of your digital presence. I think that the group might look at that and just think it's business as usual. What they want to see is that bump, that step change. If you're going to start out, with a trajectory that looks like this, and then after that 90 days for PowerUp, you're on a new trajectory. That's what they want to see. And that's what they'll be evaluating for. So it's going to be a tough job for them. Imagine, like, you can't just deliver this chart to them on a piece of paper and say, here, you have to make this chart come out in your application, in your documents, the quotes, the scope of work, your case brief, etc. All right, we're going to get specific here. So I said software, I said hardware, I said services of the marketing and IT variety. This is not an exhaustive list, and they don't have an exhaustive list. Oh my gosh, I am stumbling over my words today. They don't have an exhaustive list on the website either. But given my background in the domain, I'm very confident that initiatives that were intended to implement software of the types listed here, as long as they were for a step change and a process of adaptation, a strategy of adaptation, these would be eligible. So I'm going to read them. Multimedia production, SEO software, online presence software, CMS. People might ask, what is CMS? This is content management software for your website. You may have heard of the world's most popular CMS system, which is WordPress. You may have heard of other ones like Contentful. You may have heard of integrated ones. Squarespace comes with a CMS system. Next is CRM, customer relationship management software. This is software that helps you manage all the interactions with your customers. Basically, it builds records of people you interact with. There's really cool automations. For example, any email that I send with anybody, as long as this special tool is turned on, gets captured in my CRM software. That way, if somebody else is working on the account, so let's say there's, the Acme Co, and I sent 100 emails back and forth with them, it's really tough for me to bring somebody else in my organization up to speed on what's happening with that account. Well, with the CRM system, they can jump in, they can see notes, they can see meetings, they can see all the emails, they can see everything. CRM system is awesome. Also really, really key to have CRM system as like a core pillar of a lot of the bigger digital upgrades that you might make. A lot of folks, they come to me and they say, hey, we made all these cool changes to our website and digital ads and all of these things. And one of my first questions is, do you have a CRM system in place? It's kind of like this hub that helps manage all this customer data. And the goal is really improving the customer experience. If you've ever had, there are some internet service providers in our country that I have had some very frustrating customer experiences with, to say the least. And I've had them with regards to client projects, and it's like they can't figure anything out. They can't remember any of the conversations that we had. We agree on one thing, and then 2 weeks later, I have to explain it to somebody else. What I always say to my clients is they have a CRM problem. I'm dealing with like 5 agents over there at that service provider. Their CRM is poorly configured or barely working and hobbling along, or they have bad practices in place. And one rep continues to ask me questions that I've answered 5 times over in the past with other reps. If you want great customer experience, CRM. Okay, I'm going to rip through the rest. Social media scheduling software, ad management software, ERP, that's enterprise resource planning software. This one is probably for that, 100K and above. There are ways to get into ERP software on a smaller budget, but it's really when you start to get into this realm of bigger digital projects, trying to integrate all of your digital tools into one piece of planning. It's financial management, it's e-commerce, it's inventory management, it's a whole bunch of other things rolled into one. Okay, financial management software, project management software, network control software. So this is things like managing your network, threat detection and threat prevention on your network, antivirus and managed antivirus, payment processing software, subscription management software, e-commerce management software, shipping management, inventory management, office productivity. Now, I don't think all office productivity is going to be eligible. And so if you want to use this money to spend it on office productivity, you basically have to say, I think, this is my guess, we never had proper office productivity software before. This is our first investment in it. We didn't have a proper Microsoft Office license or a proper Google Workspace license. We were using Gmail and consumer grade Google Drive, let's say, and we need to make sure that we get into proper office productivity software. Be careful with this one. You want to make sure that you make the case properly. Next, webinar, video conferencing software, network control software. I mentioned that twice. It's really important. Proposal management software. This is an awesome one. I will tell you right now that this has been a game changer in my own organization and client organizations that have implemented it. Digital proposal management software. Templates. I've taken the time it takes to develop a proposal down from 4 hours to 20 minutes. And then I've also made it extremely simple to gain that approval, that signature, and then push it into some other process that is usually a fulfillment process. And then email marketing software. There's a lot more that would probably be eligible. So if you've got an idea and you're not sure, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk through it with you. Okay, next, hardware. Any questions on software from the crowd? No questions. Everybody's having a great job, and I'm obviously super clear. So let's move forward. Hardware. Computer upgrades. Now, this could be a stumbling block. If you're going to order 5 computers that are the exact same types of computers that you've been running for the past decade of your organization, they might get a bit wise to this and ask questions, and it might reduce your chances of success. However, if you are a shop, I'll describe to you the most common situation with a lot of my micro business clients. They basically use consumer grade hardware, and that laptop or all-in-one PC that you buy off the shelf for $500 to $1,000 at Best Buy, it's really not designed for use in a professional environment. If all of a sudden we decide we're going to upgrade into hardware that is proper for our environment, that means it's designed for enterprise use. It comes with Windows Pro licenses as opposed to Windows Home licenses. It has higher specs and yes, a slightly higher price tag. Those computer upgrades would probably be eligible. Next, network upgrades, if a step change. So again, it could be a stumbling block. If you basically have an office network that just has that piece of hardware that the internet service provider gave you, which hint is an all-in-one machine that doesn't do a very good job of the 8 jobs that it does, that is definitely eligible. So a proper business network that has great security, great reliability, great performance is one that's built for that environment. Hint again, if you are working from home or you are working from the office and you don't have proper network infrastructure and you are constantly struggling with Wi-Fi or wondering why your internet is slow, it's probably because you don't have proper network infrastructure or the proper hardware. So many people, they say, I called Shaw or I called Bell like 5 times. I'm supposed to get 300 megabits down and I can never get that. My internet's always slow. Well, that tiny single little machine that's supposed to do your wireless access, your routing, your security, everything, it struggles. And they're, quite frankly, they're delivered at bulk. They're pieces of junk machines. So Of course, they don't do a great job. Network upgrades and proper network infrastructure is the way to go. So firewall and security gateway and appliance, wireless access points, proper switches, network attached storage. Storage drives with redundancy built into them, structured cabling, fiber, IoT, automation or edge computing, servers, backup hardware, surveillance and access systems. A surveillance system that's connected to the network that stores video surveillance footage on a NAS. These are like network upgrades that would definitely be eligible. Moving forwards, display, multimedia hardware. I'm not sure if everybody here has seen the office at Auxesys downtown, but we have a big multimedia setup that we use for presentations. It's a 5-monitor setup. It's all connected to a custom computer and wired into the network and architected and designed with a specific purpose in mind. A lot of people, they have around the office space, special units that display company bulletins and all that type of stuff. These types of things would be eligible if they're a step change. Next, media and content production hardware, cameras, camera equipment, multimedia switching, those would be eligible. Payment processing, customer service kiosks. Again, the list goes on, but feel free to ask. Next, service. So service, consulting, execution, building, these are also all eligible. So from a third-party contractor who you work on these projects with, a lot of the time it's like, hey, we want to upgrade hardware, we want to upgrade software, but it's like, I run a small practice. Like, I don't know how to implement and configure software or set up a network hardware, and you probably shouldn't waste your time on doing that. So services are usually kind of a necessary component of the hardware and the software. So installs for computer network upgrades, managed antivirus, managed backup, managed IT. Some of you may already work with a managed service provider. Some of you do not. If you're in a small practice and you've been banging your head against the wall with regards to IT, probably the situation is that you don't realize that you actually manage your IT and you're, a specialist in accounting or something. There are organizations out there where for the fraction of the cost of an IT manager, you can have managed IT. Moving forward, audits and assessments, network consulting, multimedia design, systems architecture. So I mentioned like a big multimedia installation. You might want to design and architect it, or you might want to architect your server environment. Maybe you want to do fancy stuff like hyperconvergence and high availability, blah, 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 jargon. But those would be eligible. Software development, cloud infrastructure or migrations, system administration, website design and development, digital marketing, consulting and support is a big part of what we do. Well, everything mentioned so far is a big part of what we do at Auxesys. Graphic design, content creation, blog writing, video production, social media posting and scheduling, and digital ad buying and management. Again, that list goes on, but if you have something in mind that's not on this list, just make sure that you are making a great case, that it's in the spirit of the initiative, and that it's for a game changer, a step change for your organization. Okay, I already alluded to this. I'm going to kind of zip through this slide because we've got about 15 minutes left. What's the difference between TechUP and PowerUp? PowerUp focused on adaptation. So basically all the same stuff, but if you can make the case that it's going to adapt your business model, your process, your operations, your culture, then that's the difference. Okay, some thoughts on reading between the lines. These are some things that we recommend. Again, take it with a grain of salt because we're not associated and this isn't official. But we do have some recommendations that we believe will really help increase your chances of success. So first, we advise having a theme, especially if you're going to recoup. So if you're going to recoup for some new software for marketing over here and network hardware and some new video cameras and some multimedia installations, and it's kind of all over the place, it's going to be really tough to evaluate, right? Is this element in the spirit? Is this element in the spirit? Is this element in the spirit, etc. I've got some examples that will help illustrate this. We also advise building forwards whenever or if possible. So of course, recouping is eligible. But like I said, if you're going to recoup, that's going to be a signal in the evaluator's head to go, oh, okay, I got to look through these receipts and actually make sure that they're not just for, photocopiers that have always been used, but for something that's new. So if you're recouping, it's going to be just a little bit more diligence with your evaluation of your application. Next, use the right language. I can't stress this one enough. It's so tempting to say marketing as opposed to digital marketing in an application. Do a little bit of diligence, read the website as much as you can and pay attention to the language that the DMI uses. Hint, I've been using a lot of the language that they use in this presentation. Identify some of those keywords, lead with them in your case brief. And what I mean by lead is it can be very tempting to say a lot of nice stuff about the organization and this, that, and the other thing, and then bury the keywords in the last paragraph of a section. Find those keywords, bring them out. First things first is my favorite trope from the world of writing. Put the keywords in the first sentence and the first paragraph. Make it easy for the people who are evaluating your application. People are evaluating your application and they have to read 300 words before they get to that one keyword that they're looking for. You're lowering your chances of success. If you find those keywords and you bring them to the front of everything that you write, better chance of success. Okay, 4, this one gets a bit specific. If you have the case brief, you may have noticed that in section 4, it asks you to describe scope of work, but it's a fillable form and there's about this much. There's about room for 3 lines there, which anybody reading it is gonna have to scroll through 3 lines at a time. We've advised that our clients, they include appendices for section 4. So your scope of work and that outline of your project could be as short as a page, it could be as long as 10 or 15 pages. Make it easier on the people who need to read your case brief. In ours, what we've done with ours and our clients, we say see appendices, appendix A, see appendices, appendix B. That would be my recommendation here. Okay, our thoughts on recoupment. I've already gone through this. I keep driving this home because I really think it's an important one. And then, like I said, you want to make it clear. I'm going to tie this idea of making it clear to the theme idea. If you are trying to recoup and the recoupment is more in line with a theme, it'll be a lot easier for the person evaluating to be like, oh yeah, that's for this. This is for a step change. This is in the spirit. Yes, you're approved. So for example, at Auxesys, my big theme with my application is increasing our video editing capabilities here in our infrastructure. So about 4 months ago, we invested in a new video editing workstation computer. And so I'm going to recoup for that. But we are also going to invest in network attached storage so we can properly store and back up video footage, network improvements, and production gear, a camera or 2, and some audio gear. So that's a theme, right? I can kind of theme it and make it easy to read between the lines of my application. So what could some other themes be? I'm going to go through quickly 4 examples, and I really want to make sure I make it to process. If anybody has questions, maybe start firing them off in the chat here so I can start getting ready for them. But let's see some examples. So first, I think honestly, especially for small businesses, this one is like the biggest need. And so, like I said, a website upgrade might be a TechUP project. If you're a professional services firm, you've probably heard quotes for websites for anywhere from 10K to 60K. But for 25K, I truly believe that you can do, a really good website upgrade or a brand new website as a professional services firm. But if you do want to get more out of your dollar, you can do a slimmed down website upgrade project and some other stuff on it. A lot of our clients already we've done website upgrades with, so they don't have to worry about this. They can spend more of that 25K in those other elements that are fundamental to a great online presence. But if you need to sneak in a bit of a website upgrade, you could do it here too. So website upgrade aside, software and social scheduling, review management, review requests, digital listing management, digital ad monitoring. So that's software for all these different things. These are really helping solidify your online presence. And the basics that so many people skip. So many people, they spend hundreds of hours on social media, but then if you go look up on Google My Business, they have a 2.5-star review, and it's like you're just losing clients by the droves if you've got that issue. So review stuff. Hint, if you don't have any reviews or you've got very small number of reviews online, you're in a great position. Proactively increasing your number of reviews is the way to go. Regular consulting, so support. Some of this stuff is complicated. You don't want to hire a senior marketing manager for your small firm, but it helps to have like somebody to talk to for a very short period of time, weekly or bi-weekly. At Auxesys, we have something called the Done With You service. Next, SEO. SEO is not a button you can push or a lever you can pull. SEO is work that needs to be done over the long term to increase your likelihood of ranking favorably on the search engine results pages. Prepaid digital ad budget, sizzle videos. We've been doing a lot of this with our clients. So many of our clients, it's like they spend hours and hours doing YouTube and webinars like me. And it's like, hang on, let's put together a digital ad strategy. Let's do 3 30-second videos that are gorgeous, beautiful, absolutely professionally produced. Let's put a strategy behind them. Let's make sure that each video is tailored to a different stage in the customer journey. Let's sync it up with some landing pages and help make sure that it's done properly, the way that the experts do it. So that's an example of what an online presence upgrade project was. And so my thought is, if you wanted to do a website upgrade project, you might have to axe the sizzle videos or the landing pages, but you can still do a lot with 25K. Okay, robust digital advertising. So maybe you've actually got a great online presence, you've got a great website, but you haven't really, shown that you can generate good value with digital ads. Again, 25K is probably the proper amount of money, whether you're a small retail outfit or a small professional shop, probably the right amount of money to make sure that you can actually do a decent job of getting your digital ad initiative off the ground. I'm not going to go through all the details in this one, but I will include the deck and the recording for those folks who attended and didn't attend in your email. Follow-up email. So there'll be follow-up email with some bonus content and the recording after this. Okay, another sample project, like I mentioned, small business network upgrade. Again, I'll skip through this. I talked about this quite a bit when I did the hardware thing. Sample project number 4, managed IT services. So maybe you've been in a situation where it's like you're managing everything to do with your software, your operating systems, your users, you have no onboarding, you have no offboarding, you're not sure about security. A managed IT service. So putting a managed IT service in place would be an awesome option for a project like this. So I'll give you an example. For a shop of 5, if you're a shop of 5 professionals in a boutique professional services firm, for example, just to use this as something to compare to, managed IT service for the year is probably going to cost you about $16,000. You're probably going to have some upgrade and some installation fees on top of that. $25,000 is really good for a first year of moving into a managed IT service, of getting the ball rolling. Is it going to do everything? This is a really tough conversation in managed IT services. No, a managed IT service provider can't offer you infinite services for $25,000, but they can really make a huge dent at improving and solidifying the foundation of your IT. Okay. Process. How does this all work? Probably the part I'm most excited for. And of course, I only have 5 minutes left for it. But the flowchart, the process on the website is described, but they didn't include a flowchart. And we've got to read between the lines here a little bit to build one. But I'm pretty sure this flowchart is highly accurate based on what I've learned from the platform. I'll zoom out. You can see it, right? Hey, there's like 15 steps here. It's kind of complicated. Now, where you are currently in this process, you might be here, you might have uploaded your documents, you might be waiting for the portal to register again. There's a number of places that you might be, but we know right now if we haven't registered, we have to wait. Then we registered. My recommendation, a lot of people ask me this, is do this concurrently. Prepare your documents because it's a first come, first serve basis. Prepare your documents so that the moment that you're able to upload your documents, you can upload your documents and you're not finding yourself stuck behind a huge line or missing out. Okay, when you register, that DMI team, they'll evaluate your registration. Then there's 2 decision points here. They're going to determine your eligibility. If you're eligible, you get an email. If you're not eligible, and this isn't exactly clear, you may get an email and a chance to resubmit your registration. If you do, you go ahead, you make the necessary changes, you resubmit, then they reevaluate, and then we get back here. So this is a loop. DMI determines your eligibility. If you're a yes, you'll eventually get an email with a portal setup. There should probably be a delay in here, a D, like one of these purple ones, but it's not clear how long that delay is, so I've left it. But you'll get an email with portal setup. I think a few of you might be at this stage. Then you'll be able to upload your documents. The upload documents thing is a little bit unclear, but like I said, it's on a case-by-case basis. And how thick your documents should be and exactly what type of documents you should have depends on the project. So my thought is, for this this example, online presence upgrade, this is the type of project that I really believe is truly in the spirit of the fund. They're probably going to get a ton of applications for projects like this. It's like, do you need a 15-page proposal for this project? No, you're probably going to be okay with a 2-page quote and a little bit of words that say, speak to the proposal element of it. So that's my thought. And again, if you're doing something completely out to left field, like artificial intelligence or something that they're not going to see much of, you might want to get a bit more of a proposal together. Okay, so you've uploaded your documents. Right now, here's the current state. That submit button is not activated. So we are waiting for that submit button to activate. It seems to me pretty clear that this submit button will be activated before the pause on registration is lifted, but that's also not exactly clear right now. So we'll continue to monitor that. But if you've uploaded your documents or you have the portal and you're waiting to upload your documents, monitor for the submit button to be reactivated. They did say they will notify us. Next, we submit the documents. It should be as simple as pressing submit. Then the DMI team will evaluate your submission and all of your documents. And then basically they're going to make a decision. Are they going to approve you or not? If they don't approve you, it's not clear. Are you going to have another chance? Are they going to come back to you and say, hey, well, there was elements of your application that were great, but there were a couple things we were wondering about. Now, I don't want to mislead anybody and I don't want to misstate anything, but let's just imagine if we were two people administering a fund of $15 million with over 1,000 applicants. It's like, how much time and energy do you think we're going to have to pour into this, circling back with people who maybe didn't cross all their T's and dot all their I's? Probably not as much. We're going to be pushing. They're going to be pushing to get that $15 million out there. And then maybe if they have capacity left over, they might circle back for those people who didn't quite get it right the first time. Okay, so we'll be notified of our success. If we're successful, then 5 to 7 business days will go by. And finally, funds will be transferred into your account. And it's as simple as a bank transfer. The funds will just appear in your account one day. And thank goodness that they have done a really good job of putting the technology together and making sure that it's streamlined. I haven't really seen too many technology grants that, for all of the speed bumps that are certainly here, they have done, the Chambers of Commerce has done a fantastic job of putting the program and the system together. Okay, moving forwards, Auxesys and then questions. Everybody's being pretty quiet today, so if you've got any questions, shout them out. Okay, so Auxesys, our approach to assisting. Really, we've got really a simple kind of 4-element approach to assisting. So like I said, and I've said repeatedly, if you are looking at elements of this deck and presentation and thinking to yourself, well, he's not really answering my question, I still am curious, reach out at any time. I have a page up. It's simply dmi.auxesys.com. I'll send that out. I'll actually type it in the chat here. It's so easy to type. dmi.auxesys.com. It's in the chat. You can go to that website and you can use a button to book for a discovery call. No strings attached discovery call. If you have questions or you want help sketching out what a project for you could look like, open door policy at Auxesys, digital open door policy. Next, we have been providing assistance with completing the business case brief and identifying the necessary support, meaning like, should we have a proposal? Should we have a quote? Should we have a scope of work? It's like, how exactly do we make sure that the language on that business case brief is going to maximize our chance of success? We have been, of course, developing those quotes, proposals, and scope of work documents. And then again, of course, executing on the successful projects. So that's the way in which we support. I think the really big one for me, and I want to be transparent, like it's a fantastic opportunity for service providers like Auxesys and other people in my space and my competitors alike. There's a ton of awesome work to be done by IT and digital marketing service firms here in Manitoba. But my interest in my own business and what could potentially happen, what good could come of it for my own business, is far outshined and outstripped by the excitement I get when I think about the benefit that this will provide for Manitoba businesses, Manitoba families, tuitions, foods on table, helping manage households. Like, this is such, like, you can tell I'm talking about it. I'm getting fired up. I'm getting excited. And that really has nothing to do with my business other than the coincidence that these are the services that we deliver. I am pumped to think, especially for small businesses, how much of a massive help this could be to get into some new digital initiatives. So really, like I said, digital open door policy, Auxesys, we get really excited to just have these discussions, because my thought is, even if we have discussion and we do discovery and we dump in time to working and coordinating with people, my firm is still a little bit young. We're 4 years old as a company. We're a year old as an incorporated business, and I'm hungry for knowledge, as are the people that we work with at Auxesys. So even the discussions that just still stay as discussions, it's like, oh my gosh, they are honestly sometimes more valuable to us than projects, because we just learn so much about what's happening out there, especially in Manitoba. All right, so that's 103. That's 3 minutes of extra time. I think I made it through everything that I wanted to get through. So I want to thank you sincerely, everybody who attended, from the bottom of my heart. And I get a feeling that the group here is going to be a bit timid, but I'm going to take one last stab of opening the chat or the Q&A section up for questions. If you're wanting to chat or use the Q&A function, look to the bottom of your screen. You can't see it on my screen because I've got it off to the side, but you should see mute, stop audio participants, chat, Q&A, etc. I should have ran a poll at the start when I was wondering who's registered and who's not registered, but whew, my excitement got the best of me. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like we're going to have any questions. Well, I think I'll just wrap by saying thank you, everybody. I'm so excited to see what your organizations do with the DMI. And as I mentioned, our digital open door policy, feel free, shoot me a line, shoot me an email, use our website. We even have contact forms right on the website. You can book or schedule time directly on my calendar. Feel free, always happy to speak with folks at other Manitoba businesses. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and all the best in your applications for the DMI. Take care.